Good afternoon. Welcome to the Johnson County Public Policy Council Forum for the Overland Park City Council Ward 2. I'm Reagan Cusimenio, co-chair of the Overland Park Chamber's Public Policy and Advocacy Committee. We'd like to thank the Reach Foundation for hosting today's forum, and we will start for the next 60 minutes. We'll have an opportunity to meet with and hear from the candidates for Ward 2 about the issues that are important to the business community and the community at large. To start, let me introduce and welcome our candidates, Ms. Melissa Cheatham and Mr. Roger Tarbutton. Our format will be as follows. Each candidate will have a 2-minute introduction, and then we will go to a 2-minute response to questions that have been prepared by the Public Policy Council, and then we'll conclude with a 2-minute closing statement. Prior to starting, the order of speaking was drawn at random, so we'll start our opening statement with Melissa, and then we will go to Roger. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the Overland Park Chamber of Commerce, Reach Healthcare Foundation, and the Johnson County Public Policy Council for hosting today's forum. And if you're watching, thank you for being an engaged resident of Overland Park. I'm glad to be here with our business community. Business is really part of my family's DNA. I'm the daughter of 2 small business owners, and I spent a lot of hours as a kid after school and on weekends listening to my parents bring home office talk, do paperwork at the dining room table. I used to spend time in the office kitchen, and I remember always being amused because there was a sign above the sink that said, "Your mother doesn't work here, do your own dishes." And I would say, well, my mother does work here, and leave the dishes. But I know what it means to bring your business home with you as a small business owner. I'm also married to an entrepreneur who started his business right around the same time we started our family and chose to settle here in Overland Park. So I know that the things that make a community strong for raising families are also things that make a community strong for starting a business, and the way that a strong business community and strong families and great neighborhoods interact. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today. I think that our business and our people are the things that work together to make our community strong, and that kind of collaborative approach would certainly be my approach as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Roger.
Good afternoon. I'm Roger Tarbutton, and I just want to thank the Chamber for this opportunity. The Chamber does a great job of promoting local businesses and in attracting new development to the community. It's then the city's responsibility to look at new development proposals, compare them with the development plan to make sure they fit in properly, and make sure that they fit in with the character of existing neighborhoods. With over 30 years of experience in the legal profession, approximately 10 years in banking, and then 40 years, I guess I should say, 10 years in banking and 30 years with Johnson County's legal department, where I represented and gave legal counsel to various departments, some related to business and construction, such as Johnson County Wastewater. I look forward to working with the Chamber of Commerce and the staff of the city in handling these types of issues. Based on my conversations going door to door with hundreds of residents of Ward 2, I think that I've gleaned about 3 main priorities that are currently in their minds. First is they want a safe neighborhood. We need to protect our neighborhoods. As you all know, crime has increased over the last few years, especially property crime. So we need to make sure that we have fully funded police and fire departments. Second, they want balanced development that will not interfere with the character of existing neighborhoods. We have many mature, beautiful neighborhoods in Johnson County and in Overland Park that need to be protected. An example of this recently was the proposal to put a 6-story high-rise apartment building, 210 unit at Ranch Mart South. I live in a neighborhood that's just adjacent to that, and I helped with the organization of neighborhood opposition to that particular proposal because I just didn't feel like at that location, that massive size of a development fit. And we did a neighborhood HOA survey that indicated 2/3 of our residents agreed. Lastly, they want great infrastructure at reasonable cost. We need to minimize tax increases because my feeling from talking to folks is that seniors are currently on the verge of being taxed out of their homes due to inflation generally and higher taxes. Thank you.
We will start with our first question, and that is for Roger. A recent poll released by the Kansas City area home builders and the Overland Park Chamber Foundation found that 75% of the respondents believe the city is going in the right direction. What is your reaction to this, and do you agree or disagree?
Yes, I generally agree. I think that our city is a great city. I've lived here over 20 years. I grew up in Johnson County. I went to local schools, colleges, and universities, and it's been my great pleasure to live here. However, I do see some, I guess you'd say, storm clouds on the horizon related to higher taxes, as I just mentioned, and a proliferation of high-density development, which I think is especially threatening to long-time established neighborhoods. On the tax front, I think our recent 10% tax increase was wholly inappropriate. The reason being, I'm not opposed to the purpose for it, being to help fund public safety primarily in this new mental health development unit. However, I think that the $4.2 million required could have easily been funded by reprioritizing our budget. Obviously, public safety has to be at the top of our list. We have many lesser priorities that are also receiving funding and actually receive increased funding in this new budget. Obviously, police protection and neighborhood safety is of a higher priority than just about anything in our city. We all love the Arboretum. We love the soccer fields, the golf courses, all those types of nice amenities to have, but we got to recognize that our priority has to be public safety. There's plenty of money left over from the prior year's budget. It could have been used to fund public safety initiatives such as this one without raising a $1 mill levy increase. So in general, I think that we need to be careful about taxes. Also, as I mentioned on my Ranch Mart example, we need to be a little more careful about high density development. I know that's in vogue right now, but I do think it threatens existing neighborhoods with increased traffic, congestion, and other types of problems. Thank you.
Okay, Melissa?
Thanks for the question. I'm definitely in agreement with that 75% who feel like Overland Park's going in the right direction. In fact, I've knocked on over 2,000 doors, and the most common thing that I hear from people is, oh, I don't really pay that much attention to the city government because things are really working well, and I'm just living my life, enjoying living here in Overland Park. So I think it's interesting that when so many people think our city is going in the right direction, that people seem to want to change directions. And I think the direction we've been going is forward. I think we've seen an evolution of the city, a place that was a great place for my mother and father-in-law to grow up decades ago. Wasn't the same city that was a great place for my husband to grow up. I can't even do that math. Also decades ago, but fewer decades. And it's not the same place that that we have now, and it's not the same place that my kids are going to want when they're deciding where to settle down and raise their families. So I do think we need to keep the city moving forward. I think there's things that are absolutely the foundation of our city that we need to protect and strengthen, and I see those things as being our great public schools, which bring residents and businesses here. That's a diverse and affordable housing stock. I think it's responsible government. I think it would be irresponsible to raid our reserves or our rainy day funds because people are unwilling to invest in the things that residents are demanding. And I think it is great family amenities, and those things that might not be core services really are what bring people to Overland Park. I know when we were deciding to live here, everyone kept talking about Deanna Rose, got to go to Deanna Rose. And I didn't even know then what a Deanna Rose was, but it sure is something that when people come and visit, makes them say, I can imagine my family here. A community that prioritizes things like this is a place I want to live.
Thank you. We're going to go to Melissa for our second question. What do you believe are the greatest challenges the city faces over the next 10 years, and how would you address them?
Thank you. I do think we have challenges ahead of us. One that I've identified is the division that we're seeing in our city and among city leaders. I think our city has been really successful because we've had a collaborative approach, both when council members are together at the dais, collaboration between staff and elected officials, and collaboration between business, nonprofit, and government. So I think that I would try to restore some of that cooperation and civility. I have a record of doing that. For example, I served on a task force with some of the chamber members who are looking at updating the city's building codes. And, I was a member of the city's Environmental Advisory Council that was served with that. I was at the table with home builders. We didn't come at it with the same goals, but we were able to work together. I learned from what they shared about their experience in the field. We were able to find ways to come together around solutions. And from that process, Overland Park now has the most efficient building code in the county. We also launched an innovative new program to incentivize home builders to make their new homes electric vehicle ready and solar ready. And so I think that kind of willingness to sit down with people who have different priorities, treat everyone respectfully, listen, learn, and come up with innovative solutions is the solution to that division.
Thank you. Roger, same question.
Right. I think one of our biggest challenges currently is transparency in government. I ran for city council first 2 years ago, and as you might recall, at that particular point in time, Overland Park didn't even have a public comment period at their city council meetings, which was absolutely reprehensible. I believe we were the only governmental unit in the area, probably in the state of Kansas and Missouri, that I'm aware of, that did not have a public comment period. And I went to many meetings 2 years ago prior to running and deciding to run on some fairly controversial issues where people had to literally sit in the back of the chamber and hold up signs because there was no other way that they could communicate directly with their council members. And obviously that was not a pretty sight. And that really is what prompted me to run for city government at that point in time. I was used to working for Johnson County government where they always had a public comment period. You might be limited to 2 or 3 minutes, but at least you had an opportunity to show up and express your views on various issues. And the city had done, I don't know exactly the reason why they didn't, but there was a definite disconnect with the residents at that point. After that election, they did ultimately approve a public comment period. However, there's still more work to be done because at the committee level, many important decisions and outcome determinative decisions are made at the committee level. And committees are very important in Overland Park. They weren't very important at the county because of a different structure. But Overland Park, the committees have a great deal of authority and power to make decisions. Once those are made, they just send them up basically to the council to be rubber stamped. Currently, we have no public comment period at committee levels meetings. We often don't get adequate notice and an opportunity to be heard. Thank you.
Right, we're going to go to question number 3, and we will start with you, Roger. How will you specifically engage with business leaders to make Overland Park prosper?
Right, and I would certainly welcome the opportunity to do so. In my 30-year career with Johnson County government, I interacted on a frequent basis with business leaders on various issues that would come up. We were very successful in working those out and negotiating those satisfactorily. I'm a collaborator, and so we very seldom got involved in litigation. I worked for Johnson County Wastewater primarily, was probably my biggest and most important department. We did all sorts of things. We transferred the city sewer systems from Leawood, Lenexa, Mission Hills, and Lake Quivira over to Johnson County Wastewater while I was there. I did all the legal work involved in that. And obviously some of those were very somewhat contentious because there's a lot of moving parts in transferring infrastructure like that, and sometimes employees even. So I've had great experience in dealing with business leaders. We dealt with business leaders on a daily basis, questions like easements, line locations, things like that, expansion of the sanitary sewer district to serve new businesses and new subdivisions. We came up with some innovative agreements and ways to serve new areas, which both safeguarded the county from a financial point of view and also provided the business leaders an opportunity to go ahead and develop. So I have a great deal of experience in that, and we look forward to working with the business leaders and the staff of the Chamber of Commerce and city government in order to resolve issues.
Thank you. Melissa, same question.
Thanks. Well, I think relationships are really the foundation of any sort of progress and problem solving and innovation. So I would expect that I'd spend a lot of time meeting with business leaders as I've been doing since I started my campaign. You know, in the early stages when I first filed, it was before most voters were really paying attention. And I spent those early months meeting with community leaders, elected officials, Chamber of Commerce, nonprofit, advocacy groups, because I wanted to start those relationships. And I think that having those ongoing connections based on mutual respect, understanding, so that you know who to call when there's a question. They know that they can come to me. They know that I really do care and want to listen and learn. And I think that that is really the key to working together and solving problems. I learned that when I worked for a congressional committee, and I learned that serving on the city's Environmental Advisory Council is, don't wait until there's an issue right before you that you have to vote on to get started. Start building those relationships now, and I would anticipate that I'll be reaching out to business leaders in Ward 2 and throughout the city to understand their priorities the same way that I've been reaching out to voters to understand their priorities.
Thank you. We're going to go to question 4, and we'll start with you, Melissa. Overland Park rates highly in countless community assessments, yet competition with other communities for jobs and quality employers is fierce. What tools would you employ as a council member to ensure Overland Park remains competitive in economic development?
That's a great question, and I think the way you phrased it is particularly apt because we're not operating in a vacuum here, and so we've got to look for all the tools in the economic development toolbox and deploy those strategically and at the right moments to keep Overland Park competitive. I think the bedrock is keeping our community strong. So again, I think things like strong schools, diverse and affordable housing, that's what lets talented workers live here, and that's what businesses need more than anything. So we have to do that first. And I've heard a lot of people when I ask what's important to them with local government, they talk about schools. And one of the things I tell them is, besides having my own kids in public schools, that you can count on me to be a very strong voice as an elected official when we have Overland Park elected leaders going into Topeka and voting against our schools. Because I do think that anyone who's voting against our schools is voting against our city. In terms of tools, I think that we need to use tools like tax incentives judiciously. I think that there is a perception, perhaps somewhat correct, that the city is a rubber stamp on requests that come in. I've spoken at a couple of council meetings to raise concerns about requests for tax incentives that I did not feel were in line with the city's vision. And if something's not in line with our vision, then we shouldn't be subsidizing it with tax dollars. I think that we need to be very clear about what our vision is. Forward OP says our vision is to be welcoming, innovative, and forward-thinking. So I'd be looking to use those incentive tools selectively for projects that are welcoming, forward-thinking, and innovative.
Thank you. Roger, same question.
Right. I think obviously we're rated one of the top cities in the United States in which people want to live. I think based upon that and just the overall positive responses to various surveys, Overland Park is a very good place to live. And I think just based upon that alone, it's going to attract a lot of business development opportunities. And that's partially the job that we work in cooperation with the Chamber of Commerce for. They develop or help develop good business opportunities. They send them over to us to look at and approve if they fit within our comprehensive plan and within our neighborhood structures. So I don't think there's a necessity to spend a lot of tax incentives in order for us to attract new business development. And I would refrain from getting into a competition with other cities, whether they be in Johnson County or across state line, to do that, because those are basically pie in the sky propositions. We don't know if those are going to pan out or not. Most tax incentives last 10, 15, 20 years of duration. And in the long term, we hope that they will pan out with, more jobs, more sales tax revenues, things like that. But it's not a certainty, and that was shown up at the Prairie Fire Development, where there was a recent study which showed that it's not going to pay off for like 100 years based upon the tax incentives that were provided. So I'm not opposed to all tax incentives. I think there are good examples where it's a necessity, such as at 95th and Antioch. We all know that area was declining about 10, 15 years ago. I think that was a good use of tax incentives to bring it back. But I do think that we're going to find a lot of great development opportunities and business opportunities just by being a great place to live and keeping taxes reasonable. Another problem with tax incentives, they do reduce the tax base, which tends to throw a greater burden upon the residents and the local businesses, at least for the duration of the tax incentives. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to, starting with Roger again, on the question number 5. Or not there. As you are aware, the current city manager has announced his retirement. What qualities and characteristics do you want to see in the next city manager?
Right. Yes, that's a great question. When I worked for the county for 30 years, I saw county administrators and then county managers come and go. Most of them were great. They came from a variety of backgrounds. Some had Masters of Public Administration degrees and had spent a lot of time in county management elsewhere or city management. Others just had a business background and did equally well. So I don't think that a degree qualification is really the litmus test that you want to use. I think instead you want a well-rounded person who has a great deal of experience, both in the public and the private sectors, and who can do a great job. Someone who has the aptitude and initiative to be able to collect data quickly and grasp it and come to logical conclusions. And someone who's a collaborator, someone who has the ability to collaborate with staff and the elected officials and the business community in arriving at good conclusions and business decisions.
Thank you. Melissa, same question.
We've been really lucky in Overland Park to have some great city managers, and our current one has always really impressed me with his work interacting with council members and answering my questions as I've been a candidate. So I think we have a high bar here for our next city manager, especially with all the accolades our city has gotten. I think that there's a number of things I'd be looking for in a city manager. I think clearly the city manager is the day-to-day management responsibility of the city. And so having that ability to manage a large staff, a large budget, a lot of moving pieces, and keep their hands on what they need to, as well as be able to delegate to a large staff and trust their staff. But I'd also be looking for someone with some vision for our city. I think that the city of the future in the next 10, 20 years is not going to be the same as the city of the past. And so I'd be looking for someone who's got some understanding of some of the big picture challenges that all cities are facing, someone who's willing to tackle climate change, someone who's willing to look creatively and innovatively at the type of city that we might need to be in the future. I also have heard, I've asked some staff who I have relationships with what they think, and one of the things they've always said is that they have always known that the city manager has their back. And so clearly someone who's got the trust of the staff, I think, is going to be really important. I think you also need someone who's got a pretty strong backbone because I've got a strong personality. There's other council members who have a strong personality, and someone who can gently make sure we know what's our job and what's not.
Thank you. We'll move on to question 6, and Melissa, we'll start with you. How will you balance the priorities within your ward with those of the city as a whole?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost, I'm going to be representing Ward 2 and Ward 2's interests at the table. at the city council. That said, I think that there's a lot that we have in common across our city, and though we have some different challenges in the northern part of the city that relate to revitalization and maintenance that are different than some of the newer parts of the city, we're really only going to succeed when we are all kind of paddling in the same direction to move our city forward, to solve problems. I think I'm the right person to help solve problems for a place like Ward 2. I've been out, I've knocked on over 2,000 doors, and really already been helping people solve some of their problems, helping them learn about our OP care system to report problems. I've solved problems in my neighborhood, like getting a crosswalk, signs, paint, ramps put in to make it easier to get to our local park. And so I would prioritize Ward 2, but I do think that what is good for Ward 2 is good for the city as a whole.
Thank you. Roger, same question for you.
Yes. Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I think that first and foremost, I would be obviously representing the residents of Ward 2. However, indirectly, I'm representing the entire city. So I would not forget about that or let that escape my considerations on various issues that might come up. I think that we need to be careful that we are equitably allocating resources between Ward 2 and the other wards within the city. I know that from walking, there have been some people who have criticized the current city government for what they felt was inequitable treatment. Like, okay, they got better streets, we get chip seal, they get better streets, concrete in some of the southern wards. Obviously, to the south, we have newer development. So we don't have some of the aging issues that we have with some of the buildings and construction in homes in Ward 2. So I think that we need in Ward 2 especially to focus on protecting our established mature neighborhoods, make sure that they're not being encroached upon by huge development, making sure that they have the resources available to maintain and keep up their properties and neighborhood. And so I think that there's some distinctions in the type of emphasis. I think in Ward 2, it's obviously already developed, whereas out south, there's still a lot of land to be developed. In Ward 2, we need to be careful about infill development, make sure it fits in with the existing neighborhoods and won't detract from them, and with an eye towards actually enhancing the existing neighborhood's vitality going forward in the future.
Thank you. We're going to start with you, Roger, for question 7. According to the Johnson County Community Housing Study, Overland Park needs approximately 4,600 owner-occupied housing units at or below $250,000 and approximately 2,700 rental units with monthly rent at or below $1,000 to satisfy attainable housing needs by 2030. What is your reaction to this finding, and what specific proposals would you bring to the table to support attainable housing goals?
Right, I think that's a question which really is more apropos to the southern wards. Obviously, Ward 2 and Ward 1 are both pretty much fully developed. We just don't have the land mass, the way I look at it, to accomplish some of those goals. However, in our southern wards, we do. So I think that those types of goals should be emphasized more in the southern part. In Wards 1 and 2, we need to make sure that our aging infrastructure is being properly maintained to support our existing neighborhoods. And if we are going to use tax incentives, I think there may be a case, I haven't really studied it in depth, there may be a case for actually using tax incentives to help maintain and redevelop our older apartment units so that they will remain or at least become more affordable. We do have a lot of apartments in Ward 2, both sides of Metcalf, around 95th Street. We have a lot of existing housing stock, which I think probably meets the definition of affordable in Ward 2. We just need to make sure that we maintain them, keep them up, and we need to perhaps assist the owners or new developers who might come in to redevelop them. Obviously, we need to work with home builders in order to make, if you need 1,000 new apartments, you need 2,700 new homes. You can't do that as a city. You have to work with the business community to provide them with the incentive to actually go out and make those accomplishable goals.
Thank you. Melissa, same question for you.
I think the housing affordability question is really important. It's part of our family's story of why we're here in Overland Park. When we chose to settle here, I had just decided to become a stay-at-home mom, and my husband had taken a substantial pay cut to start his own business, and we were still able to afford a great single-family home here in Ward 2, and I'm not sure that that would be true today for other families. And clearly, there's a lot of people who want to live here who don't live here right now, and that's because we are a great community, and I want us to be a welcoming community for people who work here, people who work here should be able to live here. And so this is absolutely a challenge that I think is important for us to tackle. I was a member of the Housing for All task force that was put together by UCS of Johnson County. And one of the things that I really took away from that process and from other work with the city is that we're really doing a pretty good job building those large apartment complexes and doing a good job building very large lot, single family homes. The average new home size in Overland Park was nearly 6,000 square feet last year. So we've got to do more work to catch that missing middle. So how can we build more starter homes, condos, townhomes, cottage neighborhoods, accessory dwelling units that could start to fill some of that in for folks who are somewhere in the middle. I also support taking a look at the full cost of living in Overland Park. So I was a member of the Building Code Stakeholder Group and as a member of the city's Environmental Advisory Council, and we achieved that new homes are going to be the most energy efficient in Johnson County. If we pay lower utility bills, that makes it more affordable to live in your home in Overland Park. If you have transportation choices that allow you to walk, ride your bike, or take public transportation, maybe go down from being a 2-car family to a 1-car family, that is going to make it more affordable for you to live in Overland Park. So I do think we need to look at the full suite of affordability questions.
Thank you. Melissa, we'll start with you for question 8. What elements of Vision Metcalf and Forward OP do you believe are the most important for the future of Overland Park?
Well, I don't know, you can't pick a favorite child. I think that those are really exciting documents and visions because they do represent a collaborative community process. Vision Metcalf predates my involvement with the city, but I was part of the Forward OP process. I was a community ambassador, and I remember being at the convention center filled with hundreds of people who were thinking about the future of the city. And the 3 words that really emerged from that process were welcoming, forward thinking, and innovative. And I really see those as going together. And I think that that's well in line with the Vision Metcalf vision for this area. We're sitting right here in Vision Metcalf in a beautiful new office building that's at street level, where maybe after this I might choose to walk to a coffee shop, or maybe if I lived in one of the new apartments that I could walk there and then go have dinner all without using a car. I think that's very exciting. Downtown is a place that people who grew up here many years ago loved, and it's a place that our family now loves because of the investments that have been made, and it's vibrant and full of life. And I think that kind of vibrancy that was started years ago is well in line with the Forward OP vision.
Thank you. Roger, same question for you.
Right. Vision Metcalf, I guess the poster boy for that probably, or poster child, would be the downtown renovations and the new construction that they've had down there. And as I go walking door to door, I kind of get mixed reviews on that. And actually speaking, most of the folks that I talk to who bring that up, I generally don't bring that up as a topic because it's not Ward 2, say they really don't care for the changes that were made downtown. And they seem to have several reasons for this. The height of the buildings, the setback from the street gives kind of a tunneling effect like you might experience in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. The density of the apartments, they just wonder who's living in all these apartments. Do we really need them? especially when you consider what's going on out south. Aesthetically, I personally don't care for the look of the new downtown buildings. I think that we should have limited the height of them somewhat to maybe 3 or 4 stories rather than 5 or 6. I think that a different style of building would have fit better with the traditional historical value of downtown. I grew up here. I know what the old downtown looked like, probably going back to about 1960. So I think that there's been a lot of discussion about that. I think that we could have done a better job aesthetically with it. I do like the fact that it tends to be more vibrant now, and that's an aspect of it that I do appreciate. But I do think we could have done a better job in the planning and design of downtown. I think as far as forward OP goes, I think that one of the big priorities there was to maintain neighborhood vitality. I think that's something I've obviously been talking about today. We need to protect these older neighborhoods, established neighborhoods, from any type of new incursions that might detract from their livability. Also, one aspect of, I see my time is up. I was just going to reiterate that I do think that Vision Metcalf should be restricted to the Metcalf corridor and not extended out to places like Branch Mart.
Thank you. We'll go to question 9, and Roger, we'll start with you. Since its founding in 1960, Overland Park leaders have had a long history of visionary planning. What do you believe the city should do to ensure the city's prosperity for the next 60 years?
Yes, obviously the city, it's prosperous, it's growing. Population growth, I think, is going to be a major aspect or factor that we're going to have to look at closely as far as maintaining a balance of growth. I think that's going to be one of the major issues that we're going to have to look at. Other issues as far as vision, I think we need to increase transparency. We need to find out and make sure that we know what our residents really want. Over the last 2 years, when I've been following city issues, all too often there's a very strong impression that the city council either doesn't know what most of the residents want or they don't care. And I think that this is really a bad look for the city. I think that by, as I mentioned earlier, enhancing notice and opportunity to be heard at committee meetings would enhance that. So that's one thing that I would encourage is greater transparency. We saw some examples of that at the Brookridge. I went up to all the Brookridge hearings on the tax incentives. They were very contentious. All the neighbors were opposed to it. Basically, the only ones who were in support of it were the developers and the city council who voted for it. It was kind of like, well, we don't really care what you want. We're going to go our own way. And I'm afraid that's really not a good look. I think that needs to be changed. Another issue was this recent Highway 69 toll road. Most folks didn't want it. The council ignored them, went ahead and approved it anyway. I think we could have negotiated a much better deal with the state had we sat down and did so.
Thank you. Melissa, same question for you.
Thank you. I agree that the city clearly has done a good job planning, and that's why we're where we are today. I always think about that the city that was here for my family to choose to live in wasn't built by accident. It was built with intentional planning and decision making that long predates our search for a place to live and raise our family. And so that's absolutely the outlook that I would bring to the council. I've got 2 kids, they're 7 and 10. So the decisions we're making now are going to determine whether Overland Park is on their list of places to settle down when they're choosing to live and raise their families and start businesses. I think the real solution for how we do that well is community engagement. And I think the city's done some things really well. We talked about forward OP. We have a public planning process that's coming next year for the comprehensive plan. I think something we need to make sure we do is figure out how do we bring different voices to those conversations? How do we invite them to join? How do we seek them out? How do we meet people where they're at? Because the truth is that you can't expect the group of people who show up at 7 o'clock on a Monday night to be representative of everyone in the community. So, you know, just as an example, there's a public process going on with the farmers market right now, and they had a great in-person meeting with posters and people could put sticky notes on them. And I said to the staff, how about you bring these posters to the farmers market? I think there's new online tools that can better engage people. I also think a part of that planning conversation for the future needs to be a conversation about what kinds of development and projects and land use create value in our community, and a real conversation about choices, because if we want to maintain our affordable cost of living and affordable tax rates, we've got to look out at some of those planning horizons and where that value is created.
Thank you. We're going to start with question 10. We'll see you're going to start that question out. Do you believe the Overland Park City Council is responsive to the needs of the community? Why or why not?
You know, I think it's probably a mixed review on that. I will say this. I think everyone who's there really is there doing the best that they know how, and with the best interests of the city at heart. But I think the way that people expect to interact with their government is shifting. You know, I am active on social media, and I hope everyone will visit my Facebook page and see the kind of communication that I want to establish with residents. You know, I've not just been sharing my views on things, but I try to share useful information. I'm already reading the council agendas, and I've been trying to distill those down to a couple bullet points that I think might be of interest to residents in Ward 2. So I think that there's opportunity to improve, absolutely. I also think we're dealing with a lot of complicated issues when you're talking about city council, and it's real easy to tell people exactly what they want to hear. But, you know, I know that there's real choices we have to make with a limited budget at council. You know, the chip seal conversation is one, and I tell people, you know, it's kind of like why I drive a scratched up minivan. It's not because it's the very best solution. It's not top of the line, but it is what our family can afford, and we've prioritized other things in our family budget. I've had that same conversation with people about chip seal. No one really loves it. It's not great. Every 7 years when it comes through your neighborhood. And I found most people are really willing to engage in thoughtful conversations. So I would encourage and invite those kinds of conversations and understand, you know, we need to let residents in on the decision-making process and make sure that they know that their voices matter, and that we're listening to them and that they understand what's on the table as well.
Thank you. Roger, same question for you.
Could you reread the question?
I can. Do you believe the Overland Park City Council is responsive to the needs of the community? Why or why not?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question and very broad. I think in some cases they are, in some cases they're not. As I just mentioned, a few examples where I did not feel they were responsible or responsive. When you go to a public hearing and people actually show up, you have the gumption to show up, and that's sometimes difficult, and get up there and speak out at a public hearing, you know, I think you got to listen to them. And I don't get the impression from a lot of these issues that come up that the city council is actually listening to people. I mentioned already the Brick Ridge tax incentive debacle. Also, the now Ranch Mart, they did actually listen. And I think that was partly because of the extended neighborhood opposition, the fact that the Ranch Mart folks organized well. They actually got a petition, which was, you know, in opposition to that, which meant that a supermajority of the city council had to approve it. They could not come up with a supermajority. So I think in the Ranch Mart situation was a little different. But they did actually turn down the proposal to rezone Ranch Mart to allow for this massive building. So I think it's a mixed bag. I think sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I think my main focus at this point would be to enlarge that transparency and opportunity for notice to the residents of what's going on and giving them an opportunity to participate at an earlier stage at the committee levels is what I see as being essential. Because we see time after time that when these issues come up, many of these outcome determining decisions have already been made before people are even aware of what's happening. And I'm glad to see that hopefully that won't happen with the farmers market situation, because it looks like they're trying, at least making some attempt to get people involved earlier. But that would be my main focus, to try to increase responsiveness.
Thank you. We're going to go into our closing. Roger, we will start with you and you'll have 2 minutes for close.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, well, it's a lot shorter than I expected. Well, I just want to thank the chamber once again for having this. I think it gives us, both the candidates and the electorate, an opportunity to see how we differ on issues, what our outlook is on different issues, what our experience level is, and what we would bring to the table if we are elected to the city council. I think the chamber's done a fantastic job over the years in promoting local business and in providing and bringing great development opportunities to the attention of the city. And that's part of the reason why we're such a successful city today and why people want to live here. The city and chamber have many common goals. The city promotes business development and opportunities, and the city assesses them. And that's a critical role of the city, to actually look at these development opportunities and recognize that you just can't approve everything that comes down the road, which I'm afraid we've kind of gotten into the habit of doing. I think we need to listen to the residents, what their wants and needs are, and approve things that are consonant with both what makes sense from a business standpoint and what is best for the neighborhoods and the residents of the entire city of Overland Park. And if I get elected, that will be my goal, will be to represent the city of Overland Park to the very best of my ability. And I would look forward to working with the city staff and the Chamber of Commerce in resolving and handling issues that come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Melissa, 2 minutes for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again to those who are watching. I'm Melissa Cheatham, and I'm asking for your vote. I'm an experienced problem solver for Overland Park families. I live here in Overland Park because I think it's a great place to live today, and I want us to be evolving and growing so that this will be a great place for my children to live someday. I've already been experienced at solving problems in our community. I've been active in my neighborhood. I've been active with my children's school. I've been active with the city, and I bring solutions to the table. When my neighbors said that it wasn't safe to cross the street, I worked with neighbors and others in the area to get the city to put in crosswalks that they had previously said weren't justified. When neighbors said that it wasn't safe for their kids to walk to school because we didn't have a crossing guard, there had been a dispute for years about which city should pay for it. And I brought, along with the PTA, people together from 2 cities, and we solved that problem, and we have a crossing guard now. When we said that there was a problem with people not building new clean energy infrastructure on new homes, I joined with home builders to reach a consensus to provide incentives for new homes to be built solar ready and electric vehicle ready. I'm ready to hear what problems you're experiencing in your neighborhoods and your community, and I'm looking forward to working together to solve those. Thank you, and I'd appreciate your vote on or before November 2nd.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending and watching online. Again, I'd like to thank the Reach Healthcare Foundation for hosting us today. I'd especially like to thank our candidates for participating in today's forum. We appreciate your time and your willingness to serve the community. A recording of this event will be posted on our voter education site at votejoco.com. And finally, we encourage everyone to learn about the candidates and vote. Advanced voting in person does begin on Saturday, October 23rd, and polls will be open election day, Tuesday, November 2nd, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Thank you and have a great afternoon.